Okay. The current year and place in the story is 2051. The location is Planet Vulpes. I really should have kept up on cleaning this place. I apologize. I am so embarrassed. Here, lay them both on this large table toward the back. Ever since their mother freed Zmai over 50 years ago, I rarely get customers, because of the cold. The temperature doesn't bother me, of course, said Joe, the living marble statue, slapping his stone chest. Citizen Joe, said Inferno, your guilt is unnecessary. Is the heating system still operational? Joe briefed Inferno and Echo to the location and operation of the old Atro City boiler system inside the old cube operator's passageway. As Inferno and Echo took their leave, Lignius and Bijou took on the task of providing support and comfort to Emery and Emmeline as soon as they woke. Joe poured a single shot of swamp water and set it on the bar. The two androids began conveying as many details on the girls' most recent experiences so Joe could understand the seriousness of their condition. Just then Joe was alerted that Inferno and Echo had the heating system working again. A powerful 2-minute-long blast of steam came chugging from every vent and grate all across Atro City. Damn it, said Joe. I was afraid of that. We officially ran out of time. They need to wake up right now. Joe grabbed the full shot glass from the bar and placed it under Emmeline's nose. Coughing and sitting up, Emmeline seemed okay as Lignius tended to her. Joe moved the full shot glass under Emery's nose, slowly moving it from side to side. Emery laid uncomfortably still on the table. Emmeline prodded Emery with her foot, saying, Emery, please wake up. Joe waved the small, noxious glass under Emery's nose again. Suddenly, Emmeline's ears were ringing. Emery recoiled and sat up into a full backpedal on her hands, feet, and behind, while screaming at the top of her lungs, saying, No, Big Cat! Bijou immediately leapt onto the table, bodily snatching Emery before she fell off the opposite end, saying, I got you, it's over. Joe looked at Emmeline and Lignius, saying, Listen, every resident of Atro City will be here any minute thanks to that steam. The twins very closely resemble Jane, who flew off on Zmai 50 years ago. If they find these two, it will be bad news. Just then Inferno and Echo walked in, with Echo saying, We understand. Young Jane units, follow us. The 4 cosmic androids escorted Emery and Emmeline out onto the saloon doors of Jane's place. 2 steps into the street, and they were immediately surrounded by thousands of cold and angry Atro City residents who all hated chopping their own firewood. The androids lifted the twins into the air, and they quickly flew into the wreckage that was once the cube operator's chamber and into the cavern that had once held Zmai. Lignius held open the door in the Atro City vault and sealed it once everyone was inside. Emery and Emmeline took a few moments to simply appreciate the sheer size and collection of items that was the vault. Looking up at all the high-hanging shields, Emery asked, Hey, where's that laser pen? I have a great idea. In 2026, in New Mexico, inside the Frank Lloyd Wright house, agents 3, 2, Julie, and Jane were absent-mindedly walking around different rooms of the house. The 4 longtime colleagues and friends bimbled and tootled past each other as they walked from room to room. Julie suddenly realized she was hungry. The luncheon that was provided as courtesy from the foundry was laughable, as it indeed more closely resembled amuse-bouche than anything substantive. Speaking loud enough to be heard through the whole house, Julie asked, Does anyone else want food? Jane strode into the living room where Julie was, already standing, and declared, I propose subs from Marino's. Agent 2 walked into the living room saying, I love your sentiment, Jane. However, neither you or Julie have the ability to fly for quite some time, and Marino's is in Hackensack, Jersey. Presently, Agent 3 came into the living room with a large brown bag with the Marinos logo. Much cacophonous chatter ensued, mostly from Julie and Jane, until a natural pause in speaking allowed Julie's question to break in over the din. 3, how did you do that? Holding the brown bag with one hand and using his other hand to open the top button on his trench coat, 3 spoke. I'm allowed a few secrets, yeah? Everyone moved into the kitchen where subs were distributed and nostalgic stories were recalled with much emotion. Stories such as the director's birthday party and one's antics that day. Agent 2 asked, does anyone else remember Agent 1's first assignment that went down to be known forever as the Colossal Slinky incident? Jane's and Julie's eyes grew wide as they both stopped chewing and held their mouths slack open. That was him? The Cossack Slinky was? Agent 1? Said Jane with a mouthful of food. Julie swallowed first. Julie swallowed first before speaking. They used that bungle of a job to teach every rookie agent at the Foundry what not to do. How did he keep his job? Well, said Agent 2, maybe you don't know the whole story. Jane set her sub down on the table and stood up out of her chair, saying, I did a 2,000-word dissertation in front of my graduating class. I know that incident forward and backwards. Agent 2 calmly chewed his food and answered Jane with confidence. I have no doubt that you do. The Foundry's official version. Have you ever noticed our large friend next to you who rarely speaks? Do you ever wonder why? Slinkies. That's why. Agent 3 gave a thumbs up and continued eating. Julie, slowly chewing, looked at her sister. Jane was definitely wearing that look again. Julie had not seen this look on Jane's face since Emery and Emmeline had been born. Jane had again found cause to wear her most comfortable expression, that of open resistance. Jane, said Julie, trying to gently remind her sister, we're human now. After a moment, Jane's countenance relaxed and she seated herself and continued eating after saying, yeah. Agent 2 swallowed his food and spoke with a cautionary tone. Old Man Crispin designed the Foundry to be stronger than brick and mortar. He was building legacy. You and Lucas did a number on the brick and mortar. Crispin built the Foundry to be an idea, to be immortal. Are you truly aware of the cost of killing an idea? Agent 3 gave a thumbs down and ate his sub. In the year 2051 again, thousands of Atro City residents were now congesting the streets around the now defunct Cube Operators pit. Armed to the teeth, countless thieves, marauders, bandits, and many other variation of criminal had gathered upon the newly restarted Atro City boiler system. Shortly after this, rumor spread like wildfire that the raven-haired woman who had stolen Atro City's beloved dragon, Zmai, had returned in some kind of bewitched duplicate form. Witches, after all, were well known to use deceit and underhanded trickery to further their goals. Even as criminals, the peoples of Atro City had to stand in solidarity for the decades-old crime of dragon theft and in the name of good and decent morals. Amid the twisted wreckage of the former Cube Operators pit, citizens purposely packed themselves in the pit and in Zmai's old cavern, the antechamber to Atro City's vault. All this show of community with a singleness of purpose in that not a single person in Atro City would chop their own firewood, and on a planet with 100 million hectares of evergreen wilderness. Retribution would be claimed by the citizens of Atro City today. Zid. By the way, Zid, Z-I-D, is the flash jumping sound instead of zap, bip, snap. Zid. Zid. Shadow Lucas was flash jumping. Zid. Shadow Lucas could see that the angry mob in the streets of Atro City. Zid. Shadow Lucas, now inside the vault, observed the 4 cosmic androids along with Dum Dum and Smelly as they were planning strategically. Zid. Now inside the crowded cube operator's pit, Shadow Lucas took note of the facial expressions of the folks nearby. Clearly, no one was in the mood to pay money to watch a clown sitting in a bathtub being pulled upriver by 4 geese on this day. Zid, now inside the vault, Shadow Lucas began taking quick visual inventory of the monstrous collection. Zid, clothing. Zid, weaponry for days. Zid, currency. Yeah, maybe later. Zid, Shadow Lucas noticed there were several antique Victrola cabinets located in different areas in the vault. Zid, reading the label on the vinyl record, silently it read, The Firebird by Igor Stravinsky. Zid, another Victrola, the Firebird. Zid, another Victrola with the Firebird. And another and another and another, 7 in total. Taking care not to speak out loud and give himself away, Shadow Lucas cerebrally shouted, 7 times sweet serendipity. Truthfully, Shadow Lucas had never heard the Firebird before, but the simple fact that every Victrola was preset with the same record was something he could work with. Never was there ever such a rush as pushing all in on long-shot odds. On the opposite side of the great door was the vault. To the vault was a warthog marauder captain embroiled in an argument with some mole thieves. Controversy. Shadow Lucas thought to himself, let's give this push in the right direction. Zid, Shadow Lucas tied the warthog captain's bootlaces together. Zid, he pulled the goggles off one of the mole thieves. Zid, he pulled hard on the suspenders of one fox soldier, leaving them under severe tension. Zid, Shadow Lucas continued with his chaotic mayhem, leaving hundreds of folks in the mob with clothing or weaponry in a state of booby trap. Zap, bip, snap. Shadow Lucas now appeared in the middle of the mob and quickly pulled his own pants down to have it appear as though he was affected by the same booby traps. Twang, snap, rip, blip, tear, Now with massive confusion mixed in the already angry and dangerous mob, Shadow Lucas was standing among many who were now on the ground with his own pants down, and he shouted, "This is witchcraft! The witches did this to us!" Zid, as the fervor of the mob reached fever pitch and they collected their various states of undress, the vault door was opened and the threshold was breached. Zid, crank, crank, zid, turn, crank, zid, crank. Boom! The great door to the vault struck the opposite wall and it vibrated on its hinges. In 10 seconds' time, 1,000 zealous mob members flooded in all the available empty floor space in the vault. Roaring and shouting quickly subsided, and renewed confusion and anger set in among the mob. All the peoples in the mob stood in place, grumbling. From his hiding place, Shadow Lucas slapped his face and drug his fingers downward. Everyone else in the mob could only see the treasures inside the vault. Suddenly, all 7 Victrolas began to play The Firebird. 2 voices broke through the frantic music. Plie, pasti, rele. The voices belonged to Emery and Emmeline, who were shouting at their ballet moves as they danced with flawless execution. Saute! Each girl jumped as the laser pointer pen was tossed back and forth between each of them. Holding hands and jumping together, the girls engaged the horde with their laser pen. Zap, bip, snap. Popping into the action atop a small mountain of coins, Shadow Lucas surfed down on his hexagon pad, causing coins to spray loose like droplets of water. Holding a lit torch in each hand, Shadow Lucas made high-pitched trilling war cry as he slid down the coin mountain, making a proper mess. Zid! Shadow Lucas appeared at the center of the fray, wielding his twin torches. Holding the torches near his mouth and inhaling and then exhaling, Shadow Lucas started blowing fireballs to keep the rabble at bay for the girls. I need to pause real quick here to explain something. So Shadow Lucas is not a human. He's a shadow manifestation. He has an infinite alcohol tolerance. So what he's describing here with the torch, he's blowing already saturated tissue from his face that's been saturated prior with whatever he drank. He's just blowing his breath and it's catching fire. Just thought you'd like to know. fireballs, keeping rabble at bay for the girls. Plie, paste, chasse! Emery and Emmeline began to run up a second small coin mountain on their tiptoes, relaying the laser pen back and forth, damaging and knocking weapons out of the mob members' hands. Inferno, Lignius, Bijou, and Echo were working cleanup, seizing unarmed mob members and flying them at high speed through the labyrinth of tunnels and right back into a chair at Jane's Place Tavern, where Joe gladly served them. Zip! Roar! Shadow Lucas was again spitting fire. At the top of the small coin mountains, the twins shouted, "Plie, our best!" Both girls made the delicate motion as if picking low-hanging fruit and pointing the laser pen at the shields hanging high in the cavern. As the Firebird swelled into its powerful finale, a latticework of lasers ricocheted from every angle down on the shields, down onto the melee on the vault floor. Weapons broke, they were shattered, or coerced from the hands of the marauders at an alarming rate. The 4 cosmic androids were rocketing back and forth through the labyrinth, delivering customers to Joe. Zap, bip, snap. Shadow Lucas appeared on the top of Coin Mountain with Emery and Emmeline. "Nothing like a good clean fun, eh?" said Shadow Lucas, breathing hard. "How are we supposed to win this? More and more just keep coming through the door," pleaded Emmeline. Shadow Lucas held his torches at an angle while wearing an expression of confused acceptance. "Girls, you can't win them all. Sometimes you have to put down what is no longer working for you." Emery shouted, "How do we beat all these guys so we can get out of here?" "Out?" said Shadow Lucas. "You two have always had the power to get out, from the beginning, in fact." The horde was now scaling Coin Mountain on all sides. Shadow Lucas winked at Dum Dum and Smelly, saying, "It could only be more obvious if you had stepped in caca." The girls looked at their shoes. Emmeline asked, "But what about you?" Shadow Lucas' hardened exterior melted, and he replied, "I have been time traveling since I was 8 years old. I've seen it all, including the last 5 minutes at the end of time. I don't know when my number will be up, but I know it's not today. Besides, you girls have amazing work to do. I've seen it, and I'm so proud of you both." The horde was nearly at the summit. Emery asked, "So can we call you later?" Shadow Lucas replied, "Please don't call me later. Call me Dad." The trio hugged, and the twins leaned on the balls of their feet. Zap, bip, snap. Shadow Lucas spun his torches in his hands and slid down Coin Mountain towards the horde. And now we go all the way back to 1987. This tale is called The Last Public Tour at the Foundry. It was a typical Tuesday, mid-morning at the Foundry. Inside the office of the secretaries to the director, an informal meeting was taking place. Lily and Lila, the Fox secretaries, were making Americanos and serving cookies to the director and the 2 incoming Weasel liaisons, Stink and Stank. The purpose of these meetings was a necessary informality as outlined in the contract between the Weasel clan and the director that was generations old. "Thank you, girls," said the director, having been handed an Americano and a small plate with 2 mountain-shaped cookies. Holding up one cookie, the director said, "Strive for the summit." The others in the room reciprocated the sentiment. The director looked at Stink Weasel and asked, "So what happened to your eyes, son?" Stink touched the outside of the eye patch covering his right eye and replied, "Oh, yeah, I brought in a contract that is both an asset and a liability." Without skipping a beat, the director said, "So kill them." Silence hung in the air like lead curtains until riotous laughter broke out. Eventually, working guidelines that were agreed upon, including payment arrangements, along with protections and immunities that the Weasels were entitled to contractually. The class of 3rd graders participating in today's tour of the Foundry was a group of 19 bright-eyed boys and girls. One young boy, Lucas Green, would never escape the Foundry. The tour started as all Foundry tours before this, in the colossal museum-like lobby. The young students giggled instead of listening at the tour guide due to the various nude statues. By the time the group reached the receptionist's desk, they were greeted warmly by Opal Rinderpest, and everyone received a bag of confections from a friendly squirrel named Jeffy. The class of third graders munched and crunched on their sweets as the bulk of the tour began. For the next hour, the kids did more observing and eating than active listening. As the tour guide led them around the foundry, the group's next stop was the disguise room. The tour guide explained that the room was temporarily closed for the tour group. As the children flooded into the disguise room, they immediately began tearing into the clothing racks, props, hats, wigs, and shoes. The third graders were all allowed a full 30 minutes in the disguise room. Young Lucas Green was the last child out, and he watched the tour guide close and lock the door with a key, saying, "I'm locking it for the janitors." Lucas Green then heard a peculiar sound from behind the door. Zap, bip, snap. "Moving right along," said the tour guide, herding the third graders down the corridor. As the group of youngsters was ushered down one particularly long corridor, 3 men in trench coats and hats began walking single file close to one wall to allow the children to pass. The first man was whistling to himself. The second man was flipping the pages of a tiny notebook while walking. The third man, who was very broad and tall, especially from the frame of reference of third graders, unbuttoned the top of his trench coat and began smiling and waving to all the kids. Giggling and waving, all 19 children reciprocated the kindness. "And now, children," announced the tour guide, "a very special part of the tour. We will be going outside to experience the director's private garden." The class chattered and squealed with delight as they turned a corner and exited the building. The director's private garden was designed and maintained much in the style of a garden similar to one found in an old English manor. The lush and immense green space held a small stream, one exceptionally large oak tree, one manicured and many manicured shrubs and bushes, as well as many different types of flowers. The garden was surrounded by a high stone wall, and on one edge it was connected to the massive stone mezzanine right off the director's office. As all 19 third graders tore off through the grass, shrieking, the tour guide found their way to the oak tree, then leaning back on the bark, holding the bridge of their nose, and exhaled. Young Lucas Green trudged up to the wide stone steps of the mezzanine and made his way to the array of glass and wrought iron French doors. Pressing his small face and hands against the glass of the 16-foot-tall doors, condensation collected as he peered into the auspicious office of the director. Lucas Green had never before seen a level of fine furnishings as this, and was almost convinced this was a king's throne room. Scanning the room, he saw a framed map on the wall of the galaxy with a few pencil X's over some planets. Then Lucas saw it, the holy grail of bookcases. Quickly fogging the pane of the glass, Lucas pined over the bookcase. Lucas loved learning, especially science. Nearly limitless combinations of information at your disposal to enable problem solving and troubleshooting. Lucas impulsively reached up and grabbed the high door handles, and as expected, locked. Quickly, he started shuttling from door to door, rattling door handles, and becoming increasingly frustrated. With only 2 sets of doors remaining, Lucas decided to leave it to chance and begin to call cadence to himself with a schoolyard rhyme, saying, "Suck a lemon, eat a worm, kiss a girl to make her squirm, fight a giant, burn a witch, get your mind out of the ditch." With an alternating pointer finger, Lucas grabbed the chosen door handle and whispered to himself, "Here goes something." The latch clicked and the tall door swung smoothly open. As Lucas Green stepped softly onto the highly polished wood floor, his nose tickled from the scents of leather, bergamot, and rich tobacco. Making his way past the pinkish-red desk that Lucas thought was as big as a boat, he dragged his fingers across the glossy finish, which was nearly frictionless. Having finally arrived at a massive built-in bookcase, Lucas spotted the rolling ladder and immediately put it to use, looking at the volumes on the shelves. So many books, so little time. Art books, poetry, literature, engineering, physics, chemistry, every building trade, welding, explosives, books on warfare, politics, etiquette, and mannerisms, and several psychology volumes. One book in particular was on identifying androids and other robotic creations. Still atop the rolling ladder, Lucas heard a doorknob turn. 2 foxes, 2 weasels, and the director walked from the secretary's office into the larger director's office. The director was just delivering the punchline to his most famous, and some would say trademark, joke, saying, "So then I tell this guy, 'No, you smell my finger.'" The 5 of them howled with laughter. Stink Weasel absent-mindedly touched the exterior of his eye patch and sniffed the air. Stink tapped Stank on the upper arm, asking, "You smell that?" Stank held the very tip of his tongue out past his teeth and sniffed the air, with his head back, and finally saying, "Yeah, that's..." while his toothpick between his claws. The director said, "Bergamot, do you like it?" Lily and Lila were both sniffing the air, and Lila said, "No, boss, it's not that. It's like..." Bang! Ocean burst into the director's office, and he was carrying a cardboard box that he had kicked the door from the Fox's office. "Director," said Ocean, "it's ready. I brought it straight up from the lab." The director spoke with a strong, full voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed a most advantageous day. Ocean, Weasels, Ocean. This is a project I've been working on with Ocean for some time and had played very close to the chest, if you catch my meaning." Ocean placed the cardboard box next to the director's desk and locked eyes with Lucas Green, who was clinging to the cross members underneath the desk. Ocean and Lucas stared at each other, an 8-year-old boy and a dark gray bubble-shaped man. Finally, Ocean stood up and whispered right into the director's ear. "Ladies and gentlemen," said the director, "it seems we have a surprise guest with us today. Fetch him, won't you?" Instantly, 2 large fox faces and 2 large weasel faces met young Lucas under the huge desk. "I told you," said the weasel with the eye patch. The other weasel slid his toothpick from one corner of his mouth to the other. Just then 4 fox paws grabbed Lucas and extricated him out from under the desk and righted him on his feet. "Greetings, young man," said the director. "Are you with today's tour?" Lucas nodded, looking at everyone in the room. The director asked, "What's your name, son?" "Lucas Green," said Lucas. The director locked eyes with Ocean while he asked, "Lucas, would you be willing to play a game with us?" Ocean was shaking his head no, but the director had just put this idea into action. The director snapped his fingers and pointed at the north wall with the bookcase. The Stink and Stank moved down. The director snapped and pointed again with Lily and Lila and moved down to the south wall with the 6 windows. "What kind of game is this?" asked Lucas. "Well," said the director, picking up a gray hexagon pad from the cardboard box and walking toward the bookcase and the weasels, "it's kind of like baseball. You know how to play baseball, right, Lucas?" Lucas cleared his throat and replied, "Who doesn't?" Everyone except Lucas and Ocean were laughing. Still chuckling, the director responded with, "Naturally, who doesn't?" The director waved Lucas over to the hexagon pad, explaining, "So this is your home plate. Except in this game, you don't run to home plate. You make home plate move you." Lucas screwed up his face and asked, "What?" The director said, "Let me demonstrate." Zap, bip, snap. The director was now in front of the foxes under the windows and said, "Just like so." Zap, bip, snap. The director was now back in front of the weasels and the bookcase, again saying, "See? It's easy, right?" Unsettled, Ocean said, "Director, a word, please, outside." The director smiled at Lucas. As Talia and Tiana were children themselves, they saw this rare opportunity to genuinely play a game with another child. The director said to Lucas, crouching as he did, "Focus on the wall behind you, then lean on your feet. Try it out. I'll be right back." Rising to stand, the director met Ocean silently, and the two stepped out onto the mezzanine. Standing now on the gray hexagon pad, Lucas looked over his shoulder at the wall with 6 windows and 2 foxes underneath of it, and facing forward again, Lucas looked into the furry faces of the weasels standing in front of what brought him in here in the first place, the bookcase. Lucas set a little bit of spring into his legs and said, "Here goes something." Zap, bip, snap. Jumping, clapping, and barking happily were Lily and Lila right in front of him. "That was great! Good job!" they both said. Now, focusing on the bookcase, Lucas leaned, zap, bip, snap. The 2 large weasels slapped his shoulders and tousled his blonde curls, saying, "That was pretty good, kid. Now, how fast can you go?" The weasels grinned slyly at the foxes on the opposite side of the room, who reciprocated with sly grins of their own. Zap, bip, snap. Ocean's see-through body was showing that his insides were roiling as he said, "Director, there is one safety precaution I haven't told you about yet." The director clasped both his hands as he replied, "Well, and what is that, Ocean?" Ocean was wringing his own hands as he said, "Flash jumping, sir." Then the mezzanine was flooded with 18 third graders, followed by the tired tour guide. "What a surprise, children," rasped the tour guide. "Here we have the head of the research lab, Ocean, and the director of the foundry himself." The kids gathered around Ocean and the director in a state of excited clamoring. "Well, well," said the director, "wait right here." As the director re-entered his office, he saw Lucas Green popping back and forth between the weasels and the foxes. The director picked up Ocean's cardboard box and exited for the mezzanine once again. "Hey," said Lucas as he ducked, missing Stank's swiping paw. Zap, bip, snap. "What's wrong, kid?" said Lily, and Lila snapped their large jaws at him. Zap, bip, snap. Stink growled and Stank laughed. Zap, bip, snap. Lily and Lila were barking as they tried to grab Lucas. Zap, bip, snap. Stink and Stank snapped and clawed at the air. Zap, bip, snap. On the mezzanine, the director was reaching into Ocean's cardboard box and distributing 1 Scruples and Gloom ball to each child. "Now remember," said the director, "wait until you're home to eat these. Show your parents your souvenirs." Ocean again whispered in the director's ear, "Sir, the flash jumping?" The director nodded. "Quit it," asserted Lucas, who was standing on the gray hexagon pad. Stink and Stank lunged at Lucas. Zap, bip, snap. Lily and Lila had malice in their eyes as they clawed and snapped for Lucas. Zap, bip, snap. Stink and Stank swiped and missed. Zit! Lucas could suddenly hear sounds much slower, and it looked like Lily and Lila were walking through glue. Zit! Stink and Stank looked like they were moving slower also. Zit! Lucas was finally feeling comfortable enough to safely evade the 4 adult animals. Zid! Now he noticed he had quite a lot of time and decided to pay these unruly animals back for taking things too far. Zid! Lucas stretched Stink's eye patch, and to his surprise, it hung in place in midair, and this gave him a very good idea. Zid! Lila's belt buckle suddenly opened itself. Zid! Stank's bootlaces were tied together. Zid! 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 One wardrobe malfunction after another, and young Lucas Green kept at it. "Sir," pleaded Ocean, "I have one in the lab that slipped into a coma." The director looked at Ocean grimly. Zid! Another button. Zid! Lucas stole Stank's toothpick. Zid! Excuse me. Inside the office, the director's voice exploded. "Everybody freeze!" No one moved. The director frowned at Ocean and then looked at the foxes and the weasels, each in turn. The director went to the bookcase and selected 2 books, along with 1 Scruples and Gloom ball, and presented them to the 8-year-old Lucas Green with blonde curls. Silently, he motioned to Lily and Lila to return him to the tour, but the foxes fell down in a heap. "For crying out loud," said the director, returning Lucas Green himself. The tour guide saw the ball and two books in the third grader's hands, and one weak tear came from the corner of their eye, and only had the power to fall halfway down his cheek before it dissipated. The tired tour guide said to the group, "Who would like lunch?" Closing the tall glass door and straightening his suit, the director inhaled very loudly and said calmly, "Ozhin, this is your new permanent lab assistant." Everyone in the room was looking at the 8-year-old Lucas Green with a toothpick hanging from the corner of his mouth, spiky blonde hair, and grinning with pure venom in front of Stinkin' Stank. Ozhin began to protest, but the director held the palm of his hand up. Ozhin repacked the cardboard box and suddenly held up 2 hexagon time pad machines. "Keep it," he said to the director. "You never know when you might need it." Offering his hand, Ozhin said, "Come on, kid." Lucas growled and lunged at the 2 adult weasels in front of him before taking Ozhin's hand. Upon their exit, Stinkin' Stank tried to move and collapsed on the floor themselves. The foxes sniggered and the director held the bridge of his nose, saying slowly, Lila, this is how we're going to get ahead of this thing." Hearing their first names, the foxes snapped to attention, ran to the office, and came back with supplies for taking notes. "First of all, you two," said the director, pointing sharply at the weasels, "nothing happened here today, and that spiky-haired kid does not exist. Understood?" "Yeah, sure thing," said Stinkin' Stank. The director turned to the foxes, saying, "Coddle this boy's family. Give his father a bonus where he works. Pay off their mortgage. Pay off their vehicle. Hell, buy them 3 new vehicles. Get Lucas Green a free ride to the college of his choice. Then hire him here when he needs a job. Do it slow. Make it evolve so it seems like good luck. Do not let Lucas Green out from under our thumb." At the end of the afternoon, when all 19 third graders were headed back to their school, the tired tour guide stripped off his cap and uniform, throwing him in a trash bin, as he said, "What a challenging existence to be among the few who participate with the true side of reality." Checking the Mars Mouse watch on his wrist, he said, "Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere," and drank from a flask produced from inside his black leather tailcoat. Redepositing the flask, he said, "I will try again later. It's not like I don't have time." Suddenly he froze in his tracks and he began to giggle, which grew into a full belly laugh and then evolved into maniacal cackling. Back in 2051, somewhere light years from anywhere, Felicity was lounging on ergonomic cosmic furniture. Her cerulean skin was especially shimmery from excitement, and her emotions were running high. Felix walked up to her while he ate licorice. Felicity used her one hand and pointed down, saying, "Felix, did you just see that play out?" Felix nodded, still chewing licorice and smiling. Leaning back, Felicity said, "Those girls slay. We have to set up a play date." With a half mouth of licorice, Felix asked, "How?" Felicity replied, "Leave that to me." Felicity was thrumming like high current electricity. Felix asked, "What are you thinking?" Felicity patted her armless shoulder, smiling. Felix stated, "The choices you make are just as important as the ones you don't make." Felicity tapped the end of her nose. And now finally back in current time in the year 2026 on Earth 4. In the kitchen of one of the units of the Blue Duplex in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, for hours now, 5 family members had been having the most no-nonsense and honest conversation any of them had had in a while. Emery spoke. "Okay, I got another one. And you did say anything, right, Mom?" Jane looked across the table and said, "Yes, sweetie, you can ask us anything." Emery began. We met Shadow Lucas a few times, and Jane, Lucas, and Julie all shifted their weight in their chairs as Emery continued. Well, so do we have two dads or what? Lucas and Jane were visibly uncomfortable, and Julie was holding both of her hands over her mouth with her eyes wide. The day of the last tour of the foundry was explained, and the twins said that they understood the existence of Shadow Lucas. Emmeline spoke up. I have one. Jane replied, yes, dear. Clearing her throat, Emmeline asked, what is parental override blah blah blah? Jane, warned Julie. Jane sat resolute in her chair and stated, we told them anything. Lucas began with, so it all started right before the director's birthday party. After another 2 hours of stories with all three adults cooperating in the telling, Emery and Emmeline looked around the room and each asked, what year is it? How old are we? Lucas replied, 2026. Jane replied, you are 17. The twins began using Jane's rapid finger counting method, and Jane asked, girls, what are you counting? The girls took a very accusatory tone, saying, so, did you or did you guys not sleep together before Mom was human? Julie fell out of her chair laughing. Jane took Lucas's hand up in hers, saying, I honestly never thought about it like that before.